Is it going to be all that easy to replace an all-star closer? We'll talk about that next in this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, we have an old expression in the state of Wisconsin. We talk about guys going down with injuries or losing guys or trading guys. Next man up. How many times have I not heard that word in sports radio over the last 30 years? Next man up. In this case, who is the next man up for the Milwaukee Brewers? And maybe after that. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers. Good to have you along. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thank you, everybody, for making us the number one option out there each morning. Those of you who download our podcast have us set and ready to go each and every morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Or at night, you watch us or you listen to us. We're on YouTube. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Chuck Freeman, longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin. And, of course, number one fan. Well, not the number one. There's a lot of number one fans out there. We're all number one fans of the Milwaukee Brewers, my favorite sports team here in the state of Wisconsin, who I cry a little bit when they didn't spend any money in free agency. Paul DeJong is still out there. I call him Paul DeJong. It's actually Paul DeYoung, but I always call it Paul DeJong. Paul DeYoung is still out. We're going to get to that a little bit later on here in the show. But I want to talk about the closer's role right now because the bullpen, it's a deep bullpen for the Milwaukee Brewers. Deep bullpen. And even with the loss of Devin Williams, it is a deep bullpen. I love it, man. I just hope, you know how the bullpen is. Year to year, you just don't know. In the last 2 years, the bullpen has been pretty darn good with some of these guys. And they added a few pieces last year with Koenig and Hudson, Mears. We'll talk about all these guys. But lose a big piece with Devin Williams. We know what Devin can bring. Sure, he lost the playoff. He took the loss of the playoff game, giving up the bomb there in the top of the ninth inning in the clinching game for the Mets. But still, we all agree Devin Williams was great with the Milwaukee Brewers. And he'll go down one of the all-time great closers. And sure, his name's going to go on that wall of fame somewhere down the line. But I think it's as simple as just saying next man up with Trevor Megill. I think that for most Brewer fans out there, when you hear them, when I talk to fans all the time, and when I see it on Twitter or talk to fans, well, we got Trevor Megill. Trevor Megill last year, 21 of 24 saves. He's 6'8". He's throwing downhill like that. He's got a nice tilt there. There's no doubt about that. Big tilt on him. Two-pitch pitcher. And, yeah, when Williams went out last year, was out, Trevor Megill was fantastic. Now, Williams had a little bit of it. Megill had a little bit of a back strain last year, but he got through that. But we'll see what it's like when he's the man. I remember when, us in the media, we interviewed Megill after the game, and after most of the games, when he was clutch, and he was so clutch, what are you going to do when Devin comes back? And he would always say, hey, being the team guy that he is, whatever role they want me in. If they want me to close, they want me to start, they want me to pitch in the sixth inning, wherever role they want me to, just a perfect team guy without question. But the 21 saves, the 2.72 earn run average, he is the next man up right now. He is the first option without question to fulfill. Now, obviously, when Hader left, Williams took his spot. Williams is the eighth inning man, and Megill moves up to that ninth inning spot, and everybody kind of moves up a notch or two in that bullpen. But I'm okay with Trevor Megill getting that first crack at it. Team's bad at 196 against him last year. And got that. The K rate isn't really great. The strikeout rate isn't great with Trevor Megill, which you love as a closer to have a great strikeout rate, especially if he's going to come in the bottom half of the eighth inning on the road, or even in the top half of the eighth inning at home. You'd love to have a great strikeout rate. Not there for a guy who throws 99, but he's a two-pitch pitcher. And Trevor Megill was going to get the first crack at it. So who lines up after Trevor Megill out of the bullpen? Who is it going to be? Well, let me first list who I think it's the pecking order is to get the Megill in that closer spot. You have Megill, the closer. I think Koenig is going to be the next man up. Not to close, but I'm saying Koenig is going to be one of the setup guys for Megill. Piamps and Uribe in that mix as the next ones. Hudson, Mears. Team really loves Mears. We'll get the Mears coming up here in a little bit. But Jared Koenig, Piamps, and Uribe, I think, are your eighth inning guys as of right now. I'm not going to put Jacob Mizorowski. Some of you are saying, what about Jacob Mizorowski? We don't even know the role he's going to play on this team. I would think he's going to make the roster, but who knows? I think there's uncertainty. That's one of the questions I want to know is what obviously the Miz has got great stuff, but we'll see. But as of right now, on guys who are returning off last year's roster, I think it goes Megill, your closer, Koenig, Piamps, and Uribe, who's coming back from the knee injury. And before him, Hudson, Mears, Piguero in that mix. And that's it. I think these guys, I think a lot of those guys I feel really good about. But if Megill cannot close out, I would say the guy, well, I mean, if you would have asked me this last year, I thought it would have been Uribe. If they would have traded Devin Williams last year, I think Uribe would have been that guy. He's got all the flash, the pitches. Now, can he get it over the plate on a consistent basis? That's another thing. But Uribe, I would say, if he has a good camp, and let's say Megill fails, or let's say, God forbid, an injury, I think Uribe would get a shot. He's got closer stuff, I really believe. I really believe of the veterans that are coming back. Yoel Piamps, I should say. 31 years old at this point. He had 6 saves last year. He did save a couple of games, I believe May and June it was. ERA 3.05. Now, of course, he had that disaster in game 1 of the playoffs against the Mets when Freddie was pitching so well, and within like a handful of pitches, Piamps had given up just as many runs as Freddie. And that was it. Piamps did have a little bit of forearm injury in September. I liked him a lot 2 years ago. Losing faith in him a little. Don't have the trust in him. I thought Piamps would be closer, would have a closer candidate. Again, he has closed out games before, but I don't know if I had the same confidence. I don't have the same confidence as I did a couple of years ago with Piamps. 2 other guys out of that bullpen. I think this gets overlooked sometimes, and I'm not saying with everybody, but the 2 lefties, Jared Koenig and Brian Hudson, just amazing seasons last year. Hudson's 6'8", and they just got him in a steal from the Dodgers. I bet you the Dodgers wish they had him back. Of course, the Dodgers didn't matter if somebody's under control or not. It doesn't matter to them. But his ERA under 1 earlier in the year. He was optioned up to Nashville, down to Nashville when he had a little dip in his velo. And, but I mean, I thought one time, man, he had all-star. He was throwing like an all-star out of there. But all things considered, a little bit of still a mystery why he was sent down in September. And I believe he was kept off the playoff roster, as I recall. Jared Koenig, 1.35 earned run average, 9-4. One point, like during the season, like in June, he was like the team leader in wins. But lefty, independent league veteran, and I'm hoping both of those guys, Koenig and Hudson, can return to form like they did last year, be as good as they were last year. I mean, they were so great last year. And I know, like I said, Hudson got sent down, but man, those 2 guys responsible for that 93 win total. I mean, they're coming out of the bullpen. Those guys held down the fort many times coming out of the bullpen. So those are guys you like. You love Megill. As of right now, Piamps, of course. Again, not as strong as I once was on Piamps. Koenig and Hudson, love those guys. Really do. Nick Mears, who they got with Colorado. Pitched better in Milwaukee than he did in Colorado. Problem I have with him is some hard contact. I don't like those hard contact guys. Hard contact guys. Guys pitch to hard contact. That's Nick Mears. And has a penchant, I think, for giving up the home run ball as well. Like you said, he was better than he was with the Rockies. The Brewers got him in the trade with the Rockies. So we'll see where Nick Mears, but he's going to figure into the rotation. He was on the postseason roster for Milwaukee. Elvis Peguero, another guy's been around a couple of years. Just another good arm out of that bullpen. I don't think he's great by any means. I still like Peguero better. I still like Piamps better than Peguero. But just another good arm. Again, you line up these guys with Megill, Piamps, Koenig, Hudson, Mears, Peguero, and Abner Uribe, and you got something out of that bullpen. I think this bullpen, they're going to have to lean a heck of a lot on these guys. Really do. And I have a feeling this is going to be what we don't want. A lot of games this year where we're going to be holding our breath 2-1, 3-2 in the seventh inning, like we've done the last several years. That's where I just think that's where the offense is at this point. I don't think very highly of the Brewers offense, but I do have a lot of respect for this bullpen. And I told you in yesterday's podcast when I talked about the starting pitching, I think the starting rotation is very good. Not great. It's not going to make you forget about Maddox, Smoltz, and Glavine. They're not going to Cooperstown anytime soon, but still a pretty good starting rotation. And then when you got to get it off to this bullpen. Now, last year, I thought with the bullpen, might have been overused a little bit. And Murphy did talk about that during the season. He said, man, I know we're out to win every game, but we got to save some of these guys. We can't use these guys every night like we're using because we're not going to have nothing. We're not going to have anything left for the postseason. Never turned out to be the case. Williams, not blaming it on him, but the table was set for Williams. They also got some nice relief from Savali in one of those games, 3 innings. So bullpen with those veterans coming back, Jacob Mizorowski, we've talked about him in the past. The book on him obviously throws 100, got a very quick delivery to the plate. And we'll see exactly what the Brewers' plans are for him coming into camp. All right. So the setup looks great. The setup looks fantastic, by the way. I like these guys. And Megill, so far, I have trusted him. I do have trusted him. Let's see if he could hold that trust. Chuck Freeman here, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Day 1, camp opens up on Wednesday. Couple of things I want to see answered maybe on day 1. We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. FanDuel, when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on all the action with America's #1 sports book. That is FanDuel. College basketball is going hot and heavy here. The conference races are heating up. NBA as well. Live betting throughout the game on live betting. So even when you miss the opening tip, if the favorite you like, it's down a couple of points, well, you'll get better odds in that way, and you can stay in on all the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine live bets into a same-game parlay. I love live betting. I do. I love it, love it, love it. And sometimes it does bite me. There's no doubt. Nothing's perfect. But the live betting, especially on FanDuel, is fantastic. And right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You hit that $5 bet, they're going to put $150 into your account just like that. No questions asked. FanDuel.com. Your shot at $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Good to have you along here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We're going to be here daily talking Brewers baseball with you. Training camp players are trickling in today. I was watching a little of the MLB Network, and of course on Wednesday the Brewers will have pitchers and catchers and other players report as well. And it's important. It's a big day to see who's there and getting some questions answered, if not on day 1, the first couple of days. By the way, our podcast, you get it on Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you download your podcast. We're on all the podcast platforms out there, because Locked On Brewers, because you great Brewers fans out there, Locked On Brewers, Locked On Brewers is the #1 Brewers podcast on the internet. As always, send me your pictures from spring training. Any of you guys down there before the games even start? Some of you guys hanging out? Send them to my Twitter account. Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. Tag me. I want to see your pictures. Who's down there already? I always thought that this time of the year, before camp opened up, well, before the games opened up, it's a perfect time to go down there, get autographs and all that. Even like the players who were difficult getting autographs from during the regular season. Hey, you have a great interaction. You can see these guys walk into their car or whatever, and they're always in a very relaxed, most of the time, in a very relaxed atmosphere, and it is down there. If you've never been to spring training, I'm telling you, you got to go. You have to go. It is so fun. And any ballpark you go down there, it's all great. By the way, my Twitter account, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. But send me your pictures. If you're down there already this week, I'd love to see some pictures from the ballpark watching some of the workouts. All right. Day one tomorrow. Number one, I want to get a health update on Christian Yelich and Brandon Woodruff. Now, it sounds like that these two might not be ready for opening day. Sounds like it. When I hear Murphy talking a couple of weeks ago to the Journal Sentinel that either one of those guys are 100%, I'm very leery. That's why I want to get a health update on both of those guys. Where are we at? What's the timetable? Do you know? Is Yelich going to hit? What's Woodruff? Is he going to be pitching off the mound? What's going on here with both of these guys? Both coming off surgeries last year. I'd love to see hear an update on both of them from Pat Murphy or the general manager, Matt Arnold. One or two or both of them. Want to hear a health update, what's going on with Christian Yelich and Brandon Woodruff. Also, third base. Who's playing third base? I saw on the Journal Sentinel the other day, they listed questions about spring training, and it said shortstop. I want to know who's playing third base, because I think, unless I'm missing something here, I'm thinking Ortiz is moving to shortstop. Okay, I would be surprised if Terang was moving over there. But I'm guessing right now Ortiz is the shortstop. So who's playing third base? What are my options at third base? Okay. Where are we going? What direction are we going in there? Freely going to play some third base? Okay. Are we still acquiring somebody? What's going on? I don't know. I just think it's kind of a big deal that 2 years in a row now, we're heading into spring training and we have no idea who's playing third base. Kind of an important spot in the lineup, don't you think? I mean, that's just bizarre to me. Bizarre to me. I have a solution. I have a potential solution. I'm not saying it's a solution. I'll talk about that coming up here in a little bit. Position challenges. Are there really on this team? I think everything's pretty much cut dry. There's no position battles on this team, are there? Catcher, Contreras. First base, Rhys Hoskins is playing first base. All right, they're paying him $18 million. He's playing first base. Second base, Terang. Shortstop, Ortiz. Let's say that for argument. I think the only position challenge right now is over at third base. Who's playing third base? Who is going to be the third baseman for the Milwaukee Brewers? Okay, we'll see. Outfield. Well, you got your outfielders, right? Depending who's pitching. You got Frelick. You got Mitchell out there. We went through the outfield depth the other day. There's 5 good guys out there, and without Yelich, all right, who I think is, when he first comes back, I would guess he's probably going to DH. I don't think they want him DHing for the entire season, but there's not really any position challenges on this team. As I mentioned, the closer spot, that's Trevor Megill. Maybe guys jockeying for position as far as setup and all that. Maybe that could be a position battle. Who's going to be the 8th inning guy? That's a possibility, I'm sure. But some of these questions, and obviously, Matt Arnold and Pat Murphy are not going to give us the keys to the kingdom on opening day or anytime. So take what they say with a grain of salt. Although when they say that Woodruff and Yelich are not 100%, I mean, that should be factual information right there. I don't think they're deceiving us in any way. But there's some questions got to be answered tomorrow. Let's get an injury update on Yelich and Woodruff. What are we doing about third base? You know, I'd love to ask Matt Arnold, Matt, how come we never address the third base spot? Why each and every year is it a big question mark? Okay. It used to be the first base spot is, we've been moving guys in and out of that first base spot too. But Hoskins is there for now. What's the long-term solution on that? How come we haven't filled that since Prince left? But in this case, at least for this year, third base seems to be the issue. Those are some of the questions I got. Well, there's one guy out there. Kind of mentioned him earlier in the podcast. We'll talk about him as a possible solution to help out the infield. We'll get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Good to have you along. And again, follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, Freimund. Love to see your spring training pictures. Bregman, I was at the Bill Michaels show today, the statewide Bill Michaels show, and I'll be on there Tuesdays during the season for a little bit, just talking to Brewers baseball with Bill. And he asked, we talked about the positions and who's out there, and Bregman, and it doesn't appear Bregman's going to Houston, but certainly doesn't seem like he's coming here. And he doesn't want one of those short-term contracts, a 2-year deal. And I would think that if the Brewers would be even remotely interested in a guy like Bregman, it'd be on a short-term contract. And that seems to be the sticky point with Bregman. Why he has not signed with anybody is because he wants that long-term deal, that 5 or 6 years. And of course, if you sign Bregman to a 5 or 6 year deal, especially the Brewers, well, we saw what happened with Lorenzo Cain. And we knew that, at the end of those long-term deals, when you sign a guy in his 30s, well, that final year or two might be a little empty-ended. You might not get a lot out of that player, at the end. And that's what it was out of Lorenzo Cain. And he eventually retired. But they released him. Didn't want to, but that's where they were with Lorenzo Cain. And if anybody who signs Bregman on a long-term deal, and that's what the Brewers cannot afford. They can't afford to be paying $20 million to a guy who is not even playing and is 36 years old. So that's the deal there. So he's still on the market. But a guy who would take a short-term deal is Paul DeJong, who's bounced around, hit 24 home runs with the White Sox last year. Guy who could play second base, guy who could play third base for you. All right. Still looks to be a productive hitter to me. Again, you could bring him in, play shortstop, keep Ortiz over at third if you want. Or DeJong's good enough, he can play third base and move Ortiz to short. If your long-term plans are moving Ortiz to shortstop, then Ortiz is playing shortstop. Okay. And I think that's when they initially traded for Ortiz from Baltimore, they looked at Ortiz as a shortstop. He played third base last year, but shortstop, and then coupling Turang and Ortiz up the middle. But Paul DeJong, you get him for a 1-year deal? Why not? What are your better options? I said this a couple of weeks ago. Moncada would have done the same thing with him. Now that he's off the table, that list is shrinking. But there are guys who are out there looking for jobs right now. Paul DeJong, I don't know how serious, but I would think that Paul DeJong is probably getting a little edgy that phone has stopped ringing. Okay. And maybe he's waiting for an injury somewhere that he can take advantage of, that he can jump in on a multi-year deal. But it looks like Paul DeJong right now, 1-year deal, and that would be ideal. Again, I'm not looking for Mr. Long-Term right here at third base for this year. Brewers have some prospects at the lower levels, possibly down the road. Yes, but right now, we need that third base spot, and Paul DeJong might be our best option over at third base. That's going to do it for Locked On Brewers. Hey, everybody, thanks for listening to us and watching us on Locked On Brewers and making us your first listen to every day. I really appreciate it. And thanks for supporting the podcast. And always give us a like if you can, either on your audio platforms or on a growing YouTube page. Our YouTube page, again, search Locked On Brewers on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. I appreciate all the subscribers. Obviously, all the content is always free, coming to you each and every day. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. and see if I would assume Murphy's going to be talking to the media. Some of the media is down there already, and I would assume Murphy's going to be talking to the media tomorrow when people start reporting, pitchers and catchers report to camp. Thanks for making us your first listen. For your second listen now, go to my guy Sully on Locked On MLB. We'll have all the spring training news. Sully, Locked On MLB. Make him your second listen after you making Locked On Brewers your first listen to every day. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day.